Breaker of this world's chain, we adore thee, whom all men love. Spotless, taking man's form, O purifier, thou art above the gunas three, knowledge divine, not flesh, thou whom the cosmos wears, a diamond at its heart. Let us look deep in thine eyes. They are bright with the wisdom of God, that can wake us from Maya's spell. Let us hold fast to thy feet, treading the ways of the world to safety. O drunk with love, God drunken lover, in thee all paths of all yogas meet. Lord of the worlds, thou art ours, who wert born a child of our time, easy of access to us. O merciful, if we take any hold upon God in our prayer, it is by thy grace alone, since all thine austerities were practiced for our sake. How great was sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth, in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. Perfect, whom lust could not taint, nor passion nor gold draw near. O Master of all renounce, fill our hearts full of love for thee. Thou hast finished with fear and with doubt, standing firm in the vision of God, refuge to all who have cast fame, fortune, and friends away. Without question thou shelterest us, and the world's great sea in its wrath seems shrunk to the puddle that fills the hoofprint in the clay. Speech cannot hold thee, nor mind, yet without thee
Here? Does it matter? The camera's fine for that you're here? I need a light, though, unless the light is... I guess this is fine, huh? Okay. It's fine. Yeah, I need a little booklet, I think. Well, it would be helpful. Thanks. Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya Sarvadharmasvarupini Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. Good evening, everyone. Today's an auspicious day. It's the birthday of Swami Premananda Ji Maharaj, one of the great monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. He was born Baburam Ghosh on Tuesday, 10th December 1861, in a village about 30 miles from Kolkata called Anpur. So he's just 2 years older than Swamiji. And his sister was married to Balaram Bosh. And because Balaram Bosh was a great devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, he was also introduced to Sri Ramakrishna through Balaram Bosh's family. His mother was also a great devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. And his first encounter with Sri Ramakrishna was quite remarkable. He visited Sri Ramakrishna probably around 8th April, 1882. He went with Rakhal, the future Swami Brahmananda Ji. And this is his own description of his first encounter with Sri Ramakrishna. Swami Brahmananda and I went to Hatkola Ghat to take a boat for Dakshineshwar. They got in a boat together, and it was almost dusk when we reached Rani Rashmani's Kali temple. We went to the master's room and were told that he had gone to the temple to pay obeisance to the Mother of the Universe. Asking us to stay there, Swami Brahmananda went towards the Mother's temple to find the master. Soon I saw him holding on to the master very carefully and guiding him, saying, "Steps, go up here, down here." I had already heard that the master would often become overwhelmed with ecstasy and lose outer consciousness. Therefore, I knew that he was in an ecstatic mood when I saw him coming, reeling like a drunken man. He entered the room in that state and sat on a small bedstead. Shortly afterwards, he came back to normal consciousness. And Sri Ramakrishna immediately recognized that Babu Ram was part of his inner circle. And he asked to show him his hand, and then he examined other physical features of his body. And he said, Sri Ramakrishna said, after examining his physical features, looking into his soul, he said, "Very good, very good." And in fact, shortly thereafter, Sri Ramakrishna identified Baburam as an Ishvara Koti. He only identified 6 of his disciples as Ishvara Kotis. Ishvara Koti means a divinely commissioned soul. Sri Ramakrishna, in one place in the Gospel, very precisely defined Ishvara Kotis as avatar ba avatarer angsho. They are either incarnations of God, like Sri Ramakrishna himself, or those who are born as parts of an incarnation. So these are highly spiritual souls, and Sri Ramakrishna himself said that Premanandaji was born as an amsha, as a portion of Radha, the great devotee of Krishna, which is very significant. And he also said of Baburam, he is pure to the very marrow of his bones. Since Premanandaji's mother was a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, she didn't object when Sri Ramakrishna asked her whether she was willing to give up her son to him, to take care of him. It was quite a remarkable incident. She came to visit him one day, and he asked her, "Will you give me something?" "Yes, sir, whatever you ask." "Will you give me your son? I want a pure-hearted boy to live here. I am greatly pleased even when he gives me a glass of water." Premanandaji's mother, Matangini, she immediately agreed. She says, "It is my good fortune, sir, that you will accept him and that he will live with you. But does anybody give away her son for nothing?" Sri Ramakrishna smiled and asked, "What shall I give you?" His mother then said, "I have just 2 requests. One is that I may have unflinching devotion for God. The other is that none of my children dies before I do." Sri Ramakrishna granted her both of these boons. So Premanandaji was so pure, and Sri Ramakrishna, because he was often in these very high spiritual states of ecstasy and samadhi, he needed somebody to kind of look after him. At times, Latu was doing that job, but Latu himself was so absorbed in divine consciousness that he couldn't look after him. Rakhal was also in such a state that he was also not very helpful as an attendant. So Sri Ramakrishna was desperate for somebody who could really look after his needs, and he earmarked Premanandaji for this job. So just to give you one example of the kind of service that Premanandaji gave to Sri Ramakrishna, on 21st September 1884, they went to Star Theatre, Girish Ghosh, to watch one of Girish's wonderful plays, Chaitanya Lila, the divine play of Sri Chaitanya. And Sri Ramakrishna tells Baburam, "Look, if I go into samadhi there, people will turn towards me and there will be a commotion. If you see me on the verge of samadhi, talk to me about various other things." So they go to the theater, and Sri Ramakrishna couldn't help but go into samadhi, even though he really tried to keep his mind on the normal plane, but he couldn't. And Premanandaji, he said, "I began to repeat the name of God, and slowly he came round." Such experiences of bhava, mahabhava, and samadhi were natural with him. He had to struggle hard in order to hold his mind down to the normal plane. So he's really an intimate disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. One day, Baburam was looking around him and seeing people like Rakhal and Latu, by the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, they're experiencing all these states of spiritual ecstasy. And so he, one day, comes to Sri Ramakrishna and begs him for samadhi. Kind of like Noren, the future Swami Vivekananda begged Sri Ramakrishna for samadhi, like that. Premanandaji says, "Please, give me samadhi." Then Sri Ramakrishna says, "All right, I shall ask the Divine Mother about it. Does anything happen by my will, my child?" But Baburam wouldn't let him go so easily, so he kept insisting. Then Sri Ramakrishna talks to others about it. He says, "You see, Baburam wept much and asked for samadhi before he left. What will happen? If he does not have it, he will have no regard for the words of this place." He then prayed to Divine Mother, "Please grant, Mother, that Baburam may have a little ecstasy or other spiritual experience." Immediately, Divine Mother replied to Sri Ramakrishna, "He will not have ecstasy, he will have knowledge." This is an important but somewhat cryptic statement. He will not have ecstasy, he will have knowledge. Jnana is the word used. He who won't have bhava, he'll have jnana. What did Divine Mother mean by this? This is open to interpretation. I don't think it means that he was not a bhakta, but he is a follower of Shankara and all that. It wouldn't make any sense if he's born as a portion of Radha. So I take it that when Divine Mother tells Sri Ramakrishna he will have knowledge, this is my interpretation, you can feel free to interpret it as you wish, that his bhakti does not manifest externally in states of ecstasy and samadhi as much as you find in people like Rakhal or Sri Ramakrishna himself or Latu. But he always has this knowledge of God in his heart. Babu Ram was not so interested in his studies, and especially after meeting Sri Ramakrishna, he completely lost interest in his studies. And he was a little bit afraid that Sri Ramakrishna would not be happy that he was neglecting his studies. But in fact, the opposite was the case. Babu Ram failed his entrance examination, and he was a little bit afraid about Sri Ramakrishna's reaction. But Sri Ramakrishna then says, well, that is very good. You have failed to pass. Now you are free from all passes. This is one of the many places where the pun that Sri Ramakrishna is making is completely lost in translation. So, because in Bangla, the word pash means to pass, to get a degree, but it also means a fetter, a bondage. And so he says, now that you have not passed, you're also free from all your pashas, all your bondages. So he's making a little pun. So after Babu Ram got his mother's permission to live with Sri Ramakrishna, he actually moved to Dakshineshwar and lived with him, lived with this great soul, God himself, for many days. And he recorded some of his, or he didn't record, but he later on he reminisced about many of his encounters with Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Ramakrishna's behavior, many of Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. I'll just share a few of them. One time Sri Ramakrishna tells him, never see faults in others, rather see your own faults. This is something Holy Mother used to teach, but it's less known that Sri Ramakrishna himself said this. Another time, this is Premananda himself saying this. He says, the master showered his grace on Girish Chandra Ghosh and even on many prostitutes. One day, the ladies of Balaram Babu's family were sitting before the master in his room when a prostitute named Ramani passed along the road nearby. The master called to her and asked, why don't you come nowadays? The ladies were scandalized to hear the master talking with the prostitute. Shortly afterwards, the master took them to visit the shrines. When they reached the Kali temple, the master said to the mother, Mother, thou indeed hast become the prostitute and the chaste woman. The ladies understood that they were wrong in hating Ramani, that the master spoke with her, knowing her to be the mother herself, and that they should not be so proud of their chastity, for it was all due to mother's will. On another occasion, Premananda witnessed Sri Ramakrishna telling a devotee, have you committed a sin? Don't be afraid. Take a vow, I will not sin anymore. I shall swallow all of your sins. Hazra, an interesting fellow who also lived with Sri Ramakrishna, he would often tell Premananda and the other boys, he says, you guys are fools. You're sitting next to Sri Ramakrishna. You should ask him for siddhis, for spiritual powers, psychic powers and these things. What's the point in being near a soul like this unless you can get these kinds of nice spiritual powers? And Sri Ramakrishna overheard Hazra telling them this. He says, Babu Ram, come to my room right now. Don't listen to his calculating advice. The beggar pesters the rich man, saying, Sir, give me a pice. Give me a pice. It means a very small amount of money. Being disgusted with the beggar, the rich man throws a small coin to him, saying, take this and get out of here. Then Sri Ramakrishna tells Babu Ram, you are my very own. You will not have to ask for anything from me. Whatever I have, it is all yours. On another occasion, much later, Babu Ram tells his brother monks, he says, very little of the master's teachings is recorded in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the Kathamrita. M., the author of the Gospel, used to visit the master occasionally and would note down his teachings as he heard them. His teachings to the monastic disciples were given in private. As soon as the householder devotees would leave the room, he would get up and lock the door and then speak to us living words of renunciation. He would try to impress upon our young minds the emptiness and vanity of worldly enjoyments. Sri Ramakrishna was very particular about every aspect of his inner circle's lives, daily lives. So he would keep a watchful eye over everyone, including Baburam, including how many chapatis he ate. So he decided that Baburam gets no more than 4 chapatis. So he told Holy Mother. Holy Mother gave him 6 chapatis. Sri Ramakrishna became furious. He said, "Are you trying to ruin his spiritual life?" Sri Ramakrishna, our Holy Mother, not to be deterred, she said, "Why are you so much worried because he had a couple more chapatis? I shall look after his future. Please don't make an issue about his food." And then he let it go. Sri Ramakrishna let it go, knowing that she was right. Sri Ramakrishna distributed 12 ochre cloths and rosary beads to his future monastic disciples, and he gave one of them to Baburam. Toward the end, when Sri Ramakrishna was suffering from throat cancer, he shifted to Kashipur Garden House, and Baburam was one of his main attendants and looked after him day and night. Finally, of course, Sri Ramakrishna left his body. After that, just a few months after Sri Ramakrishna's passing, December 1886, Baburam's mother invited all of Sri Ramakrishna's disciples, the monastic disciples especially, to Anandpur. It's a beautiful place. I recommend that you go. It's a really wonderful and inspiring place. So many of the disciples, Narendra, Baburam, Sharad, Shoshi, Tarok, Kali, Niranjan, Gangadhar, Sharada, they're all in Anandpur together, singing devotional songs together. They have a campfire lit. And Naren starts to tell his brother disciples tell them about the life of renunciation of Jesus. And later, they found out that was Christmas Eve. And on that day, they all decided to take a vow of renunciation and become monks. Later, they actually went through the formal sannyasa ceremonies, performing Viraja Homa in late January 1887. And Swami Vivekananda himself gave Premanandaji the name Premananda, which means the bliss of divine love, keeping in mind that Sri Ramakrishna had said that Premanandaji was born as a portion of Radha. Premanandaji did some traveling and some wandering as a monk at different points in his life. Not as much as his brother disciples, but he still did some. He wandered with Sharadanandaji and Abhedanandaji to several places, including Puri. And he also went to Kashi, Varanasi, where he visited Trailunga Swami, who was considered to be an illumined soul, and the learned ascetic Swami Bhaskaranandaji. And then they lived in Boranagar Mott for a number of years, the brother monastic disciples, and then they shifted to Alambajar Mott from 1892 to 1897. And of course, in the meantime, Swami Vivekananda, he comes to the West, to the US and Europe, and he gives talks there. He also visits Vrindavan and other places. I'm not going to go into the details here of his pilgrimages. Swamiji comes back from the West and founds Belur Mutt, of course, which starts in Nilambar Babu's garden house. So this is now 1898. And Swamiji makes Premanandaji one of the trustees of Belur Mutt. And he also makes him the manager of Belur Mutt, which is anyone who's been to Belur Mutt, any monks who have stayed there knows that the manager of Belur Mutt, that's an extremely important position. And you have to be on your toes all day. And he was an excellent manager. He always had the bhava that anybody who would come to Belur Mutt is Sri Ramakrishna himself. And he served them in that spirit, in the spirit of Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva, serving others in a spirit of worship by seeing the divine in everyone. And he was a bit of a taskmaster when it came to training the brahmacharis. And so he would But he would also set an example to the young monks. And so any task that he would ask them to do, he would also do with them, cutting vegetables, preparing cow dung balls for fuel. That's another thing that was done. And he would, on that occasion, he said, all work here is sacred. Whether you cut vegetables, whether you prepare cow dung balls, whether you go out to give lectures or worship in the chapel. Everything is service unto the Lord. You have to learn to do everything with an equal sense of reverence and sanctity in your heart. Another thing that Swami Vivekananda told Premanandaji, recognizing that he had this profound spiritual charisma, he said, don't initiate anyone, don't become a guru, because if you do, you'll have a lot of disciples and they'll end up quarreling with Brahmanandaji's disciples and it'll create problems. So he told him not to become a guru. But people would still flock to him in droves. He would often repeat one of Sri Ramakrishna's Mahamantras, Bhagavat Bhakto Bhagavan, Bhagavata Bhakta Bhagavan, which means that the Holy Scripture, Bhakto, the devotee, and God are one and the same. And in that spirit, he would serve devotees. Sometimes devotees would come late at night to Belur Math. Regardless of the time of day or night, he would sometimes cook himself to prepare food for the devotees and serve them. He had that spirit of service at all times. He was famous for his scoldings. Of course, they were always scoldings with love, but I'll just give you a few examples. Swami Gyaneshwaranandaji was one of the victims of his scoldings, and so he mentions these. He says, there's a conversation about Bhagavad Gita, the great scripture. And Gyaneshwaranji mentioned in the course of that conversation, yes, I've read it. Premanandaji scolded him, said, my boy, say I am reading it. Never say I have read the Gita. One can never finish reading the Gita. Another time, Gyaneshwaranji and some other young monks were weeding the mutt garden. Premanandaji was watching them. And then he noticed that one of those boys wasn't uprooting the weeds from their roots. So he says, my boy, you must pull the weeds out by the roots. Otherwise, you are simply fooling yourself and wasting time. If you do not realize the necessity of rooting out weeds in the garden, how can you weed out your old faults and tendencies? How can you understand the real meaning of spiritual life? Weed them out, boys. Weed them out, roots and all. Even though Divine Mother had told Sri Ramakrishna that he would not have bhava, he would have knowledge, he did sometimes go into states of samadhi. So on one occasion, he's meditating after the evening service, after Arati, and he didn't get up for many hours. And his attendant thought he fell asleep. So he held a light before his eyes. And then Premanandaji slowly opened his eyes. And when the attendant asked him, Maharaj, did you fall asleep? He quoted a mystical song. I am awakened and will sleep no more. I am awake in the state of yoga. O mother, I have given back thy mystic sleep to thee, and have put sleep to sleep. And then he said to the attendant, when you find me in that state, don't call me or cry aloud, but repeat the master's name in my ears. That will bring me back. In 1906, he visits Puri, and there's an interesting incident that happens in front of the Jagannath temple. There's a Christian missionary standing there, preaching Christ very loudly. And Premanandaji couldn't bear it. So he starts chanting the name of the Lord. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. And then a huge crowd of Hindus joins him, and they chant the name so loudly that they drown out the voice of this Christian missionary. The Christian missionary finally leaves. But just after that incident, Premanandaji feels quite bad about it. Then at night, Sri Ramakrishna appears to him in a dream and says, why did you break up that gathering? That man was also spreading my name and teachings. Tomorrow you must find the missionary and apologize. And he did. The very next morning, he sought out that missionary, apologized to him. It just shows his humility. Another beautiful incident, October 1914, he's in Varanasi. and he would visit the temples of Lord Vishwanath Shiva and Mother Annapurna. And Prabhuvanandaji, the founder of this Hollywood temple, he accompanied him on these visits to the temples. And so Prabhuvanandaji himself is saying this. He says, one day the head priest placed a garland of marigolds around Swami Premananda's neck. And when Premanandaji was about to take the garland off and give it to Prabhuvanandaji, Prabhuvanandaji said, "No, Maharaj, keep it yourself. You look so beautiful." Probably the Bangla word here is shundur. Then Prabhuvanandaji says, the word beautiful reminded the Swami of God's beauty, and he went into ecstasy. His face flushed, and then a light began to emanate from his whole body. Walking slowly, he left the temple, and I followed him. The temple lane was crowded as usual, but on either side of us, people stared at the Swami and made way. It was quite evident that everyone present saw him illumined. He was completely absorbed in the thought of God and oblivious of his surroundings. As we approached the outer gate of the monastery, Swami Nirbharananda, the abbot, saw us from the veranda. He immediately ordered the monks to prepare a special welcome for Swami Premananda. We entered the monastery grounds to the sound of bells and conch shells. As the Swami got to the veranda, he took off the garland and placed it around the neck of the abbot. For a brief moment, he danced in ecstatic joy. Gradually, the ecstasy abated, and the divine light disappeared. Many things I have to skip, but there's a period toward the end of his life when he became an active preacher, and he preached a lot in Bangladesh and Dhaka and other places. Swami Nikhilanandaji, who lived in Bangladesh, he was a college student and was very interested in being a freedom fighter. And he was inspired by Swamiji, and he thought that Swami Vivekananda wanted the youth of India to fight for India's freedom. And there's a very interesting encounter when Nikhilanji visits Premanandaji and Brahmanandaji, who are sitting on cots. And Premanandaji tells Brahmananda, "Maharaj, look at these young men," so including Nikhilandaji. "They are all fine boys, but completely misguided. They've become revolutionaries in order to serve India. Please give them right advice." Brahmanandaji then tells them, first you have to build up your character. Only then can you take up the service of the country. And then Nikhilanji has the gumption to challenge Brahmanandaji. He says, "But sir, you have not understood Swami Vivekananda. We read in his books that he wants us to shed our blood for India's freedom. That is what the revolutionaries are doing. You have not understood Swami Vivekananda's teachings." That was too much for Swami Premananda. "You idiot! You do not know with whom you are talking. We knew Swamiji for over 20 years. We ate together, played together, talked together, and discussed our plans of work together. And we have not understood him? And you fools have read a few pages of his books and understand him completely?" Then, addressing Swami Brahmananda, Premanandaji says, "Maharaj, did you hear that? He said that you did not understand Swamiji. Do you think he has the intelligence of a horse? Let me see if he can carry me on his back." It's pretty funny. So then Premanandaji gets off his bed and tells Nikhilananda, "Get down on all fours." And then Premanandaji sits on his back and Nikhilandaji takes him around on all fours as if he were a real horse. And then Nikhilandaji says, after a minute or two, he dismounted and said to me that everything would be all right. Swami Brahmananda looked at the whole affair benignly and again advised us first to mold our character. We left the room, and that was the end of my connection with the revolutionary society. So these great saints can bless us in many different ways. Sri Ramakrishna blessed Vijnanandaji by wrestling with him. So in this case, Premanandaji blessed Nikhilanandaji by riding him like a horse. All right, so we have to zoom ahead to the end here. 1918, 30th July, Baburam, Premanandaji, breathed his last. Just before his passing, Brahmanandaji, with tears in his eyes, brought a picture of Sri Ramakrishna to Premanandaji and said, "Brother Baburam, please look at the master." Brahmanandaji tried to suppress his own tears, and then he left the room. And then Brahmanandaji comes back, Brother Baburam, do you remember the master?" Premananda opens his eyes, looks with a smile at the painting of Sri Ramakrishna hanging on the wall, and salutes him with folded hands. And then he says his last words, Kripa, 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 which means grace, grace, grace. And he passed away on 30th July, 1918. He said toward the end of his life, I feel a desire now to love everybody. This is a disease which has now possessed me. So we see that in his life, he embodied love, divine love, for everyone and everything. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.